Is the future of youth ministry digital? Let's talk about that. What's up, my friends? Jeremy Miller here from Visit Ministries, and today I want to discuss the question, do we need to go digital with our youth ministries? But before we get into it, I want to answer the other question, did I just destroy a MacBook? And the answer is no. This was the first or second MacBook I ever owned, and now it is my children's plaything. If I knew anything about video editing, this would be where I'd insert Woody from Toy Story screaming at Buzz Lightyear, "You are a child's plaything!" But I don't know how to do that, so there we are. Recently, I heard someone make the comment, teen centers don't work anymore. You need to go digital. Now, my goal has never been to convince people to launch teen centers. Now, I've seen them be effective for over 30 years, and I think they're more effective now, maybe more than ever. We'll get into that more at the end of the video. But if you don't think they work today, that's fine. God bless you. Go find something else that does work. My goal has always been something much different. My goal is to convince churches to reach out to the hurting young people of their communities and have a shift in thinking where they do it primarily by building family with those young people. The comment that I do want to address, though, and that just kind of rubbed me wrong when I heard that, is the comment that we need to go digital. Now, this isn't just a simple yes or no answer, black or white. It's a bit more nuanced, and I want to dive into that a little bit today. Now, there has been a massive shift in what it looks like to grow up in our country today. Certainly, it is much different than when I grew up. Now, this would normally be the moment where I'd go into a long old man rant about the way things used to be and the good old glory days. You know, it was the 80s, man. No, it wasn't the 80s for me. It was the 90s. I was born in the 80s, but I grew up in the 90s. You know what I mean. But I'm not going to do that. What I want to talk about is two shifts that I've seen in our culture that I think have been especially destructive in the lives of young people. The first shift we've seen is a huge breakdown in intergenerational relationships. Families are so much more broken today than they used to be in our country 30, 40, 50 years ago. And with this has come a major increase in kids growing up in fatherless homes. So many kids today are growing up very isolated without meaningful relationships with adults. Now, this shift has been very well documented and very well understood for a long time now, but the second shift is a lot less well understood, and we are just beginning to understand the impact of it in the lives of our young people. The second shift is a shift from play-based childhood to online-based childhood. Now, I didn't make this up. You've probably heard me talk about Jonathan Haidt before, and recently I've been reading his book, The Anxious Generation, and what I'm about to talk about comes from his book, and these are his thoughts. Now, this shift began in the late 90s with the rise of the internet. From there was the advent of social media, then there were smartphones, and all of these things caused this slow shift. Now, what do we mean by play-based childhood versus online-based childhood? In his book, Jonathan Haidt says there's 4 characteristics of each of these kinds of upbringing. The first characteristic is that it's embodied. That means that we use our bodies to communicate. We're aware of our bodies. We receive and give minor social cues based on our body language and our faces. And these things all happen consciously and unconsciously. The second characteristic is that it's synchronous, which means that it's happening at the same time, in real time. And it involves subtle cues about timing and turn taking. The third characteristic is that it involves primarily one-to-one or one-to-several communication. And there's only one interaction happening at a time. And the fourth characteristic is this, that all of this takes place within communities that have a high bar for entry and exit. That means that these communities are substantive, that it takes a lot to become a part of this community, and these communities are not easily abandoned. When disagreements or rifts happen, people are strongly motivated to repair those rifts and rebuild relationships. Jonathan Haidt says that these are the characteristics of the real world, in-person communities. Now, this is vastly different than what we see in the online world and online communities. The 4 characteristics of the virtual world are basically the exact opposite of the real world. First of all, they're disembodied, means there's no bodies needed. It's all communicated just with language. The second is that it's heavily asynchronous, which means that these interactions aren't happening in real time at the same time. You might post a comment, send a text, and there could be a big gap in time between the person on the other end responding. The third characteristic is that it involves a substantial number of one-to-many communications, where we're broadcasting our thoughts and ideas to a huge number of people, and a lot of these interactions can be going on at the exact same time. And the fourth characteristic is that all of this takes place in communities with a very low bar for entry or exit. It's easy to become a part of a community, and it's almost even easier to leave a community. You can block someone you don't want to talk to, you can leave a group or unfollow someone, and nobody will ever know that you're gone. So young people today are largely lacking the real world, play-based, in-person communities that we used to have, and all 4 of those characteristics of them. And instead, their communities are largely online and virtual. And so what has been the effect of these changes in young people? Now, I don't have time right now to get into all the research, the details, and the numbers, but I think it's pretty easy to see that the impact of these changes has been a massive increase of anxiety, depression, suicide, loneliness, isolation, and other things like this because of this shift to online-based childhood. See, God designed us for in-person community. And those 4 characteristics of in-person community are vital for us to develop as human beings and have our social needs met. Online community can never meet our needs in the way that real in-person community does. And so what is it that we need to do? This is where it becomes a bit nuanced, because it's not an all or nothing thing. There's 2 things we need to do. The first thing we need to do is find these kids. Now, this is the part where we go to them and meet them where they are. So if these kids are online, then that's what we need to do. We need to be online. Our youth ministries need to have a digital presence and a strategy for meeting kids in the virtual world. And the truth is that some of these kids communicate better virtually. I've known kids where when I was in person with them, I couldn't get them to talk. You could just see the anxiety in their eyes, and they would clam up and they couldn't put a few words together and couldn't really share their thoughts and feelings. But then when I left, 5 minutes later, they'd be texting me some deep stuff and really sharing how they really feel and what they're really going through. And so if that's where kids are, that's where we can meet them and interact with them, then let's do it. But there's a second thing we need to do, and that is we need to help these kids. We need to realize that these aren't just hurting, broken kids that happen to be online, that a lot of the problems in these kids' lives, the struggles they're dealing with, is because so much of their world and their life is wrapped up in the virtual world, in an online-based community. Like I said before, the digital world cannot replace in-person community and cannot fully meet a young person's needs. They need in-person substantive communities. They need meaningful relationships with adults. See, there's a difference between where we find them and where we want to take them. We need to understand that one of the keys to these young people's transformation and growth and overcoming their problems with anxiety and all these things is learning how to integrate into in-person communities and learning how to interact in those environments. And this is the balance we need to walk. Now, what I would say, and this is my opinion, the future is not digital. In fact, I think there needs to be and there will be a massive shift away from digital. Now, we need to have an online presence. We need to have a digital component to our youth ministries. But I think more and more we're going to start to see that so many of the problems in these young people's lives come because their only community is digital. And if we want to see these young people transformed and healed, we need to give them a place to build real in-person meaningful community. I think that in-person is more important than it ever has been before, and that these kids really are deeply desperate for a place where they can build meaningful in-person relationships. And so this is where we come back to the teen centers. Here's my promo. This is part of the reason why I think teen centers are more needed now than ever and can be more effective today than they ever have before. Because these young people need a place to learn how to interact in person and receive breakthrough and freedom from the anxiety and depression, the isolation and the loneliness they feel because their world has been so enveloped in the digital world. They need to learn what it's like to be a part of an in-person community and how to be a part of it. And teen centers do a great job of giving a low-pressure place for these kids to build community. Now, some of these young people, they wouldn't make it in a fast-paced, structured youth group environment. Their anxiety, their fear is going to keep them from ever fully integrating and really being a part. But they'll make it in the context of a teen center. In my years working at the teen centers, I've seen some very, very socially awkward kids come into our centers. I've seen kids where it's clear that they have had very little real meaningful interaction with other people before. And you can see it. They don't know how to have conversation. They don't know how to be in person and be real. And it's hard for them at first. But I've seen those kids slowly blossom and transform as they begin to attend these centers, build community, and learn how to interact in a real in-person community like that. So that's my rant today. Is the future of youth ministry digital? Maybe a little bit yes, but largely no. But I think we need to be really careful when it comes to adopting the view that the answers for our youth ministries lie in the digital world. So I hope that helps you. I hope it encourages you. And let's go out there and let's reach the hurting young people of our communities. Peace.